Here we will draw the Circle of Willis, which Thomas Willis first described in 1664. Let's stage our diagram so that we learn the most commonly discussed arteries first, and then add the more advanced vasculature. As we learn the details of the cerebral vasculature, keep in mind that two main arterial systems exist: an anterior-lying internal carotid artery system and a posterior-lying vertebral basilar system. Start our diagram with the anterior-lying internal carotid arteries. Show axial sections through them. Next, show that the middle cerebral arteries originate from the internal carotid arteries and extend laterally. Then indicate that the anterior cerebral arteries branch anteriorly from the internal carotids. Next, at the bottom of the diagram, show that the two vertebral arteries join to form the basilar artery, and then show that the basilar artery ascends the brainstem. At its apex, show that the basilar bifurcates into the posterolaterally directed posterior cerebral arteries. Now show that branches of the vertebral arteries combine inferiorly to form the anterior spinal artery. Next, connect the internal carotid and posterior cerebral arteries with the posterior communicating arteries. Then show that the anterior communicating artery connects the two anterior cerebral arteries. Next, on one side of the diagram, we will draw the cerebellar vessels from inferior to superior. First, draw the posterior inferior cerebellar artery off the vertebral artery, then the anterior inferior cerebellar artery off the inferior portion of the basilar artery, and lastly the superior cerebellar artery off the superior portion of the basilar artery. Now draw the lenticulostriate branches of the middle cerebral artery. Then draw the anterior choroidal branch of the internal carotid artery. Finally, draw the basilar perforators, the pontine paramedian arteries, the short pontine circumferential arteries, and the long pontine circumferential arteries. This concludes our diagram.